The pronunciation of that is Ladhar Bheinn. Ladhar means a hoof. There's no doubt about that. The B becomes a V sound and is written BH. Ladhar Bheinn.
Now, the internal combustion engine has a lot to answer for, believe me, because now you can just pile into a car, get out, climb a hill, and you're back home before Coronation Street. But happily for wilderness lovers, there are still a few Munros that are so remote and inaccessible that you really are going to have to make an effort to get there. For instance, Larvin, which is the most westerly mainland Munro, is situated in the beautiful region of Knoydart. This is where we've decided to start the great Knoydart expedition from. It's Kinlochhourn, a beautiful place, and what this involves is a 5-mile walk along quite a rough track to Barrisdale Bay in Knoydart, where I'm afraid we have to camp. There is no choice if the bothy's full, but don't worry about me, I'm sure you're not. I'm not a seasoned camper, but Ross, the researcher with the beard who is a seasoned camper, is with me all the way, I assure you, to show me the ropes.
Guidelines.
Guidelines, whatever. The first section of this walk is delightfully straightforward. Simply follow the path from Kinlochhourn along the lochside to Barrisdale Bay. There are numerous ways into Knoydart for a backpacking and Munro bagging spree. You could take the boat from Mallaig to Inverie on the other side of the peninsula, walk in from Glen Desiree or even Glen Finnan further south. The choices are endless and will have you drooling over the map for hours. Well, the walk along Loch Hourn side is so beautiful. It would make a fabulous low-level walk if you didn't want to climb any mountains. But only 10 minutes away from where we started, you get your first view of Larvin. And when you see that fantastic mountain there, it would take great strength of character to resist it. Well, as you can see, the path doesn't always stick exactly to the shoreline. There's a bit of ascending and descending to be done. But it's quite good to get this bit of height. It's a great vantage point to look back at the view. If you can see that small house down there, just make that out. That's actually built or renovated in the site of an old 19th century pub called Skeary. And that was where E. Robertson, the Reverend E. Robertson no less, the first Munroist, went in to try and get a bed for the night, but was not impressed. He said the rooms were damp and dirty and there was no beer or whiskey. Imagine no beer or whiskey in a Highland pub. What did they have? Bacardi and Coke and Babycham. This is the most westerly section of the old Caledonian forest in mainland Scotland, and it's genetically unique as it evolved in isolation from the great expanse of trees that once covered the country. Of course, you could always get into Knoydart by boat if you managed to get hold of one, but remember to check the tides. This is us finally arrived at Barrisdale Bay after that beautiful walk. This is where we're going to camp for the night. And I have to say, the last time I stood on this beach was about 11 or 12 years ago. I walked in from Inverie, which is over by Mallaig, and it felt very much like a wilderness. It doesn't feel like a wilderness to me anymore. Maybe that's just my problem. There's lots of boats buzzing around. There's holiday cottages the other side of Loch Hourn full of people having a great time, admittedly, and there's certainly lots of walkers. What cannot be spoiled, though, is the majesty of Larvin behind me, which, weather permitting, we will be climbing tomorrow. What kind of tent is that, anyway?
It's a camping tent.
Very funny. You could do with a hoover. Have you tried hoovering it?
Hoovering it?
You can get cordless hoovers.
Cracking day. Oi.
I don't care. Just 5 more minutes, eh? Well, what's that? Smells too bad. Oh, that's great.
Brilliant.
Well, I have to to say that was a pretty painless night's camping, apart that is from Ross Murray speaking in his sleep. You can only take so much of a man screaming at Natasha Kinski to leave him alone. However, this is a fantastically convenient way to start larving if you're camping here at Barrisdale or using the bothy, because that's the very start of the Stalker's Path up the mountain. And if you're walking in from Kinlochhourn trying to do it in a day and it's low tide, you can walk straight across the bay if you're prepared to wade a bit and take those boots off. It's going to be a very long, hard, hot, sticky climb today. It's 3,343 feet, sea level start obviously, but we don't mind. We're not going to stay here and paddle because we're strong, tough mountaineers. After crossing the bay and climbing the Stalker's Path, I routed the classic horseshoe traverse of Corrigorchel, a high-level ridge traverse all the way with many ups and downs. Well, it's quite a good path up from Barrisdale Bay. Although a long, hot pool, I should say, I've worked up a bigger sweat than a sun reader sitting an IQ test. But this has got us here now to Corrigorchel, a beautiful corrie, from where you get a view of that fantastic ridge leading to the Munro Larven, which you can just see is the dark peak behind me. Now, a few years ago, Knoydart was rather controversially up for sale, and the Ministry of Defence nearly bought this piece of land. Luckily, that didn't happen, so we don't have squaddies using butterflies as target practice. Instead, this piece of land was bought by the John Muir Trust, who are dedicated to retaining wild land without interfering with the livelihoods of the people who live here. Thank heavens, because this is a fantastically beautiful and tranquil spot. The first section of the ridge is a straightforward grassy walk, but just before the summit of Stobisherickel there comes a daunting and rather intimidating buttress. The path isn't much more than a series of linked ledges zigzagging through the outcrops of rock. It's even scarier than it looks. That was so frightening. That was really frightening. Don't believe any mountaineering books that might say the exposure some might find daunting. You'll find it absolutely petrifying unless you've a great head for heights. However, we're here now, attained the top of Stobisherickel. I have no fingernails left, and let's see what we get in reward for that. Well, behind me, the other side of Loch Hourn, you can just see Ben Scriel. It's a bit hazy today, but the keen eye can pick out the Munro. The saddle is across there in the South Glenshiel Ridge. And here's some of the other Munros of Knoydart. That's Lunevin behind me, not pronounced Lunibin, tempting as it may be to do so. Behind it in silhouette is Sgurnakish, just out with the rough bounds of Knoydart, although I'll bet it doesn't lose sleep over it. That's Mialbury over there. And this glen continues down towards Inverie, where you can cross to and fro from Mallaig. Hopefully we'll see Loch Nevis when we get to the Munro. But this is the ridge we're about to do. I'm so sorry, I must be suffering from heat exhaustion. I'll cut that out later. Ridge walking in Knoydart used to be the stuff of hill walking legend. To say you'd done the Larven horseshoe meant you were made of sterner stuff than the average rambler. But the wide path that now snakes along these savagely beautiful crags is testimony to the fact that access to Knoydart is getting not only easier, but increasingly more popular. It's still hard going though, and you certainly won't find any day trippers and stilettos up here. So if you meet a fellow hill walker at all on your long day, you know they've suffered like you have to get this far. Strangely enough, although we've been walking for hours, the top of Ladhar Bheinn seems to be miles away. It's at this point, just beyond the peak of Stobisherachel, that we turn to the west and traverse what must surely be the final ridge of the summit. It's easy as you stroll along to forget that the north face of this ridge is absolutely sheer. It's a magnificent cliff, absolutely terrifying from the bottom, but quite stupendous from the top if you dare look over. But it's also worth remembering, if you get lost up here in the mist at all, that there's magnetic variation in this mountain. The rock has that effect, so your compass may not work. So if you do find yourself in thick mist up here, try to keep to the south side of the ridge just for safety's sake. The top's in cloud just now, but it's patchy, and I'm absolutely confident it'll clear when we get there, because we deserve it. We've walked so far. And misty conditions at this section of the walk are no joke. Just because the ridge is wide doesn't mean it's safe. There are some drops in the ledges that would make the strongest legs quake. Of course, that's what makes this mountain so exciting, but it's take incredible care, especially if you plan to conquer it in winter. Cornices of snow build up here in the wind that conceal the real edge of the ridge. But at long last, after almost 2 full days of effort, we're at the top of Ladhar Bheinn. This must be one of Scotland's most spectacular viewpoints. From up here, as well as the wild splendour of Knoydart itself, we also enjoy an uninterrupted view of the entire northwestern seaboard. What a cairn to drop your rock onto. Well, let me tell you, the exhilaration of having bagged the top is seriously diminished by the fact we have a huge descent down this ridge now, and then a 6-mile hike back to Kinlochhourn to pick up the cars. This is a seriously big hike, and don't forget that should you set out to do it.